Captain Jake Morrison stood on the command bridge of the Galactic Council's flagship, watching as the last enemy ship disappeared into hyperspace. Smoke still rose from damaged sections of the massive vessel, and the smell of burned electronics filled the air. The battle had lasted 6 hours, but it felt like days to everyone who lived through it. The alien dignitaries slowly came out from their hiding places behind reinforced blast shields. Their faces showed a mix of relief and complete amazement. None of them had expected to survive the attack. The Zorkan invasion fleet had brought 200 warships to destroy the core worlds, and the Council had only managed to gather 50 ships for defense. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at his hands. They were steady now, but during the fight they had moved faster than he thought possible. Human reflexes had saved them all today. While the alien commanders argued about retreat strategies, Jake had taken direct control of the fleet's tactical systems. He used human combat patterns that no alien species had ever seen before. Admiral Keth of the Serpentine Union approached Jake with careful steps. His scaled skin showed deep purple patches of respect, a sign that meant great honor among his people. Behind him walked representatives from 12 different species, all showing their own versions of gratitude and shock. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Keth spoke in heavily accented Standard Galactic, "your actions today have saved not just our ships, but our entire civilization. The Council has discussed your reward, and we are prepared to offer you anything within our power to give." Jake nodded politely, but his eyes wandered across the bridge. The alien crew members were still cleaning up damage and checking systems. Most of them kept glancing at him with expressions he could not quite read. Some looked grateful. Others seemed almost afraid of what humans might be capable of. "The treasure vaults of Centauri Prime are yours to choose from," continued a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "Rare metals worth more than entire star systems. Technology that could advance your species by centuries. Territory rights to uninhabited worlds rich with resources." Jake listened, but found his attention drifting to a small figure sitting quietly in the corner of the bridge. She had been there during the entire battle, never moving to the safety areas like the other non-combatants. While laser fire lit up the view screen and the ship shook from impacts, she had watched everything with intense focus. Princess Zara of the Velthari sat with perfect posture despite her obvious physical weakness. She was barely 5 feet tall, with pale lavender skin that seemed almost transparent. Her people were known throughout the galaxy as healers and pacifists. The Velthari had never fought a war in their recorded history. They were telepathic, but their mental abilities were used only for healing and peaceful communication. Zara herself was considered the weakest of her already gentle species. Jake had overheard other aliens talking about her earlier. They said she could barely lift objects heavier than a book. Her own people were disappointed in her because she was too frail to perform even basic Velthari healing rituals. She had been brought to this meeting only because of her royal status, not because anyone expected her to contribute anything useful. But Jake had noticed something during the battle that everyone else missed. While seasoned military commanders ducked for cover when explosions rocked the ship, Zara never flinched. Her large, dark eyes followed every movement on the tactical displays. When Jake ordered sudden course changes, she seemed to anticipate them before he gave the commands. She watched the battle patterns like she was studying them, learning from every decision. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Keth said again, bringing Jake's attention back to the conversation. "Have you decided what reward you wish to claim?" The other dignitaries leaned forward with excitement. They had prepared lists of their most valuable offerings: ancient artifacts, star charts to hidden worlds, defensive technologies, even marriage alliances with noble families from their homeworlds. Any human would be set for life with just a small portion of what they were willing to give. Jake walked slowly across the bridge toward where Zara sat. The conversations around him grew quiet as everyone realized where he was heading. The princess looked up at him with those remarkable eyes, and for a moment Jake felt like she was reading his thoughts. Not in an invasive way, but with genuine curiosity about what he might say. "I choose her," Jake said simply, pointing to Princess Zara. The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear the hum of the ship's engines. Every alien on the bridge stared at him like he had lost his mind. Admiral Keith's scales shifted to a confused yellow color. The blue-skinned treasurer actually stepped backward in shock. Captain Morrison, Admiral Keth said carefully, I think there may be some misunderstanding. Princess Zara is not, that is to say, she would not be useful to a warrior such as yourself. Jake looked directly at Zara, who had not moved or changed expression during the entire exchange. She watched the entire battle, he said. While everyone else was hiding or panicking, she was studying every move we made. She has something that all your treasures and technologies cannot give me. And what is that? Asked the treasurer, still sounding confused. Potential, Jake replied. Princess Zara stood up slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. She was even smaller than Jake had thought, barely reaching his shoulder. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. I accept, she said. If Captain Morrison sees something in me that others do not, I am willing to learn what that might be. The other aliens began talking among themselves in rapid, worried tones. Jake could understand enough of their languages to know they were discussing whether this was some kind of human insult or psychological warfare tactic. They could not believe that anyone would choose a weak Velthari princess over vast riches and power. Admiral Keth tried one more time to change Jake's mind. Captain, surely you realize that Princess Zara has no training in combat, no knowledge of military strategy, and no physical capabilities that would assist you. Her people do not even understand the concept of warfare. Jake smiled for the first time since the battle ended. Admiral, 6 hours ago you did not think humans understood warfare either. You were ready to surrender to the Zorkans because you believed they were too strong to defeat. Sometimes the most valuable thing is not what everyone else can see. He turned to address Princess Zara directly. Your Highness, if you come with me, I cannot promise it will be easy. I can promise that you will discover capabilities you never knew you possessed. Zara nodded once, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both dignity and determination despite her fragile appearance. Captain Morrison, I have spent my entire life being told what I cannot do. Perhaps it is time to learn what I can do. Jake felt a strange certainty that this decision would change both of their lives in ways he could not yet imagine. As they prepared to leave the Council flagship together, he wondered if the other aliens were right to look so worried. Maybe he had just chosen something far more powerful than any treasure or technology they could have offered. The galaxy was about to find out what happened when a human saw potential where everyone else saw weakness. The UES Intrepid was nothing like the elegant Council flagship where Princess Zara had spent the last 3 months. Everything here was built for function rather than beauty. Metal corridors echoed with the sounds of boots and machinery. The Bash crew moved with purpose and efficiency that reminded her of the battle she had witnessed. Zara followed Jake through the ship, trying not to stumble as artificial gravity felt different from what she was used to. Her small travel bag contained everything she owned, which was not much. The Velthari believed in simple living, and as the weakest member of her species, she had never been given many possessions anyway. The crew members they passed stopped their work to stare at her. Most of them looked curious rather than hostile, but Zara could feel their confusion through her empathic abilities. They wondered why their captain had chosen such an obviously fragile alien as his reward for saving the galaxy. Some of them worried that protecting her would put them all in danger during future missions. These will be your quarters, Jake said, stopping in front of a small room near the ship's medical bay. Dr. Martinez insisted you stay close to medical facilities just in case. The room was tiny compared to her palace chambers back home, but it had everything she needed. A bed, a desk, storage compartments, and a small viewport that showed the stars streaming past as they traveled through hyperspace. Zara sat on the edge of the bed and found it was exactly the right height for her short legs. Thank you, Captain Morrison, she said quietly. I know your crew has concerns about my presence here. Jake sat down in the single chair, making sure to keep his distance. He had learned that Velthari could be overwhelmed by strong emotions from other people if they got too close. They will understand in time, he said. Right now, they only see what everyone else sees, but I saw something different during the battle. What did you see? Zara asked. The question had been bothering her since they left the Council ship. She genuinely could not imagine what a human warrior would find valuable in someone like her. You were not afraid, Jake said simply. Everyone else on that bridge was terrified, even the experienced military officers. But you watched everything like you were studying for an exam. You were learning from the chaos instead of hiding from it. Zara considered this. I was afraid, she admitted. But fear seemed less important than understanding what was happening. I had never seen combat before, and I wanted to know how you made your decisions so quickly. That is exactly what I mean, Jake said with a smile. Most people, when they are afraid, cannot think clearly. You used your fear to focus your mind. That is a rare ability. Over the following days, Jake began what he called basic orientation for Zara. This started with simple physical exercises that were supposed to help her adapt to life on a military vessel. Even the easiest routines left her exhausted and shaking. Her Velthari physiology was not designed for physical stress. The ship's doctor, Maria Martinez, monitored Zara's vital signs during these sessions with obvious worry. Captain, she said, after Zara's third day of training, her body is not responding well to this kind of activity. Her heart rate becomes dangerous during even light exercise. Jake nodded but did not seem concerned. Her body will adapt, he said. Humans went through the same process when we first left Earth. Physical weakness is often just lack of experience, not lack of capability. What worried Jake more was Zara's reaction when he tried to teach her basic self-defense moves. The first time he showed her how to block an attack, she collapsed to the floor in apparent agony. Her empathic abilities meant that even imagining violence caused her physical pain. When she tried to practice a simple punch against a training dummy, she vomited and could not stand up for several minutes. This is impossible, Zara said after another failed training session. She sat on the floor of the ship's small gym, her pale skin even more colorless than usual. My people evolved to heal and help others. Everything in my body rebels against the idea of causing harm. Jake knelt down beside her, careful to project calm emotions that would not overwhelm her sensitive mind. What if we change how you think about it? He suggested. You are not learning to cause harm. You are learning to prevent greater harm from happening to innocent people. I do not understand the difference, Zara said. During the battle with the Zorkans, what would have happened if I had not fought back? Zara thought about this. Millions of beings would have died. Entire worlds would have been destroyed. So by fighting, I was actually protecting life, not destroying it, Jake explained. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is stop someone from hurting others. This idea seemed to help Zara, but her physical reactions to violence remained severe. Jake realized that traditional combat training would not work for someone with her unique biology. He needed to find a different approach. The breakthrough came during an emergency drill when pirates attacked a supply convoy near their position. Jake ordered the crew to battle stations and prepared to engage the enemy ships. As alarms blared throughout the Intrepid, he noticed that Zara had not gone to her assigned safety position. Instead, she stood at one of the bridge monitoring stations, studying the tactical display. Princess, you need to get to the secure area, said Lieutenant Commander Chen, the ship's second officer. Wait, Jake said. He moved to stand behind Zara and saw what she was looking at. The display showed the positions and movements of both the pirates and the convoy ships they were attacking. What do you see? The pirate ships are moving in a pattern, Zara said slowly. They are not just attacking randomly. They are trying to force the convoy ships toward that asteroid field. Jake looked more carefully at the display. She was right. The pirates were using a herding strategy that the convoy commanders had not recognized yet. Why would they do that? If they can trap the convoy ships against the asteroids, the convoy cannot use their speed advantage to escape, Zara explained. The pirates can then disable the ships instead of destroying them, which means they can steal the cargo without damaging it. This analysis was completely accurate, and Jake realized it had taken Zara less than 30 seconds to understand a complex tactical situation that his own experienced officers had missed. Can you predict where they will move next? Zara studied the display for another few moments. The lead pirate ship will try to cut off the convoy's escape route through that gap between the large asteroids. If someone could get there first. Jake immediately ordered the Intrepid to move toward the position Zara had identified. They arrived just as the pirate ship attempted to block the convoy's escape route, and Jake was able to disable it with a perfectly positioned shot. The rest of the pirate fleet scattered when they realized their strategy had been discovered. After the fight ended, Jake found Zara still at the monitoring station. She looked exhausted, but there was something different in her expression. For the first time since he had met her, she looked like she had found something she was good at. "How did you know what they would do?" Jake asked. "I could sense their intentions," Zara said. "Not their thoughts exactly, but their emotional patterns. They were excited about something, focused on a specific goal. When I looked at the tactical display, I could feel where their excitement was directed." Jake realized that Zara's empathic abilities, combined with her natural intelligence, made her a tactical analyst unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. She could predict enemy behavior not just by studying their movements, but by sensing their psychological state. "Would you like to learn more about tactical analysis?" he asked. For the first time since joining his crew, Princess Zara smiled. "Yes," she said. "I think I would like that very much." Jake began to understand that he had not chosen a burden or a weakness. He had chosen someone whose unique abilities could revolutionize the way humans approached conflict. The galaxy's weakest, Princess might become its most insightful warrior, not despite her gentle nature, but because of it. 6 months had passed since Princess Zara joined the crew of the UES Intrepid, and Jake barely recognized the being she had become. The physical changes were obvious to everyone. Her pale lavender skin now had a healthy glow, and her movements had gained confidence and precision. Daily training had strengthened her body beyond what anyone thought possible for a Velthari, though she still remained small and appeared fragile to those who did not know her. The real transformation was something deeper. Zara had developed a fighting style that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. She combined her natural empathic abilities with human tactical training to create something entirely new. Where other warriors relied on strength and speed, Zara used prediction and precision. Jake watched her during morning training sessions with a mixture of pride and amazement. She moved through combat simulations like she was dancing, always knowing exactly where her opponents would strike before they did. Her Velthari healing abilities allowed her to sense the weak points in any living being's body, and she had learned to use this knowledge to end fights quickly and efficiently. "Show me the Kalian restraint technique again," Jake said as they worked through hand-to-hand combat drills. Zara nodded and positioned herself in front of the practice dummy. The dummy was programmed to simulate a Kalian warrior, one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy. As it swung a massive arm toward her head, Zara seemed to barely move. She stepped slightly to one side, touched 2 specific points on the dummy's arm and neck, and the mechanical warrior collapsed instantly. "The Kalians rely on intimidation and overwhelming force," Zara explained as she helped reset the dummy. "But their nervous system has a vulnerability at the intersection of the primary nerve cluster and the secondary motor control center. If you apply pressure to both points simultaneously, their entire body shuts down temporarily." Jake shook his head in wonder. "How do you know things like that?" "My people are healers," Zara said simply. "To heal someone, you must understand how their body works. I am just using that knowledge differently than my ancestors intended." What impressed Jake most was that Zara's methods never caused permanent harm. Every opponent she defeated would recover completely within a few hours. She had found ways to stop violence without creating more violence, something that went against everything most warriors believed possible. The crew of the Intrepid had changed their opinion of their unusual passenger completely. Lieutenant Commander Chen now consulted with Zara before every tactical planning session. Dr. Martinez had started studying Velthari healing techniques after watching Zara accelerate her own recovery from training injuries. Even the engineering team asked for her input when they needed to understand alien technology captured from enemy ships. Zara's reputation began to spread beyond the Intrepid when they responded to a distress call from Horizon Station, a mining facility on the edge of Council space. The station had been taken over by a group of mercenaries who were demanding ransom for the 300 civilian workers trapped inside. Jake studied the station's blueprints with his senior officers, trying to find a way to rescue the hostages without triggering a massacre. The mercenaries had positioned themselves strategically throughout the facility, making a direct assault impossible. Any attack would result in significant civilian casualties. "Captain," Zara said quietly during the briefing, May I suggest an alternative approach? The other officers looked skeptical, but Jake had learned to trust Zara's insights. What do you have in mind? The mercenaries are not actually evil, Zara explained. I can sense their emotional patterns from here. They are desperate and afraid, not cruel. They took these hostages because they need money to pay debts to someone they fear more than they fear us. Jake considered this. Even if that is true, they still have weapons pointed at innocent people. Yes, but their fear makes them predictable, Zara continued. If I could get close enough to their leader, I could convince them to surrender without violence. Lieutenant Commander Chen looked alarmed. Princess, these are hardened criminals with military-grade weapons. You cannot just walk up to them and ask them to give up. Actually, Zara said with a small smile, that is exactly what I intend to do. Against the protests of his crew, Jake agreed to let Zara try her approach. She put on a simple maintenance worker's uniform and took a small shuttle to the station's service dock. The mercenaries barely noticed one more refugee from the mining operation coming aboard their captured facility. Zara made her way through the station's corridors, using her empathic abilities to avoid mercenary patrols and locate their leader. She found him in the station's command center, a grizzled Centaurian veteran named Marcus Cole, who kept checking his chronometer with obvious anxiety. You are expecting someone, Zara said as she walked calmly into the command center. Cole, and his guards spun around with weapons drawn, but stopped in confusion when they saw a small, unarmed Velthari female. How did you get past security? Cole demanded. The same way I am going to help you get past your debt collectors, Zara replied. She sat down in one of the command center chairs without asking permission, projecting an aura of calm that made the mercenaries lower their weapons slightly. I do not know what you are talking about, Cole said, but Zara could sense the spike of fear her words caused. Marcus Cole, formerly of the 3rd Centaurian Defense Legion, discharged for conduct unbecoming, Zara said softly. Your squad was caught in an ambush on Kepler 7th. You made a battlefield decision to save your soldiers, but civilians died as a result. The guilt has been eating at you ever since. Cole's weapon trembled in his hands. How could you possibly know that? You started taking dangerous mercenary jobs to send money to the families of the civilians who died, Zara continued. But you got in too deep with the wrong people. Now the syndicate owns your debt, and they will kill you if you do not pay them. That is why you took these hostages. The other mercenaries looked at their leader with shock. Cole had never told any of them his real reasons for taking this job. Even if that is true, he said desperately, what does it matter? I still need the ransom money, or I am a dead man. The council will pay your debt if you surrender peacefully, Zara said. Captain, Morrison has already contacted them. They would rather spend credits than risk civilian lives. This was not entirely true. Jake had contacted the council, but they had not agreed to pay anything yet. However, Zara could sense that Cole wanted desperately to believe there was a way out of his situation that did not involve harming innocent people. Why would they do that? Cole asked. Because someone convinced them that you are not a terrorist, just a soldier who got lost trying to do the right thing, Zara replied. Sometimes, people need a second chance to remember who they really are. Cole stared at her for a long moment, then slowly lowered his weapon. My men will not agree to this. They signed up for a quick score, not to become prisoners. They signed up because they trust you, Zara said. If you tell them there is a better way, they will listen. 1 hour later, Marcus Cole and his entire team surrendered to Jake without firing a single shot. The hostages were freed unharmed, and the council did agree to pay Cole's debt in exchange for information about syndicate operations in council space. As they prepared to leave Horizon Station, Jake found Zara on the ship's observation deck looking out at the stars. How did you know the council would pay? He asked. I did not, Zara admitted. But I knew that Marcus Cole needed to believe there was hope, or he would have done something desperate. Sometimes faith in what could happen is more powerful than certainty about what will happen. Jake realized that Zara had not just prevented violence through her unique abilities. She had shown everyone involved a different way to think about conflict resolution. Word of the Horizon Station miracle spread quickly through Council space, and requests for the Intrepid's assistance began coming from across the galaxy. Princess Zara had become something unprecedented. A warrior who won battles without fighting, a diplomat who negotiated with empathy instead of threats, and a protector whose greatest weapon was her ability to see the good in others even when they had forgotten it themselves. The galaxy was beginning to understand that strength could take many forms, and sometimes the gentlest approach was also the most effective. The emergency transmission reached the UES Intrepid while they were resupplying at a remote trading station. Jake watched the holographic message with growing concern as Council Admiral Keth delivered the urgent news. The Korthak Empire, one of the most brutal military forces in known space, had launched a massive invasion fleet toward the Velthari homeworld. The situation is critical, Admiral Keth explained, his scaled skin showing the deep blue coloration that indicated extreme stress among his people. The Korthak have brought over 500 warships. The Velthari have no military forces whatsoever, and their planetary defense systems consist of nothing more than navigation beacons and communication arrays. Zara stood beside Jake during the briefing, her face expressionless, but her hands clenched tightly at her sides. Jake could sense her emotional turmoil even without empathic abilities. The Velthari homeworld was not just her birthplace. It was home to nearly 2 billion of her people, all of whom had never experienced warfare in their entire civilization's history. "What is the Council's response?" Jake asked. Admiral Keth's coloration shifted to an even darker blue. "The Council is debating whether military intervention is justified. The Velthari have never contributed anything to galactic defense, and many member species question whether we should risk our ships to protect a world that refuses to protect itself." Jake felt anger building in his chest. 2 billion innocent civilians are about to be slaughtered, and the Council is worried about politics. "The debate will continue for several more days," Admiral Keth admitted. "Even if we decide to intervene, it will take weeks to gather sufficient forces to challenge a Korthak fleet of that size." After the transmission ended, Jake found Zara sitting alone in her quarters, staring out the viewport at the distant stars. She had not spoken since hearing about the invasion, and Jake could tell she was struggling with emotions too complex for him to understand. "I have to go back," Zara said without turning around. "My people have no idea what is coming for them. They do not even have words in our language for concepts like invasion or genocide. The Intrepid cannot face 500 Korthak warships alone," Jake said gently. "We would be destroyed before we could help anyone." "I know," Zara replied. "But maybe I can teach them something that will make a difference. The Velthari may be pacifists, but they are not helpless. They have abilities that even they do not fully understand." Jake sat down beside her, keeping enough distance to avoid overwhelming her empathic senses with his own worried emotions. "What kind of abilities?" "My people can share thoughts and emotions across vast distances," Zara explained. "We have always used this for healing and comfort, but it could be used for coordination and strategy as well. If I could teach them to work together the way your human crews do." "Zara," Jake said carefully, "even if you could turn your people into fighters, you would be asking them to abandon everything they believe in. The Velthari have built their entire civilization around the principle of never causing harm to any living being. And now that principle is going to get them all killed," Zara said with more bitterness than Jake had ever heard in her voice. "My parents always told me I was a disappointment because I was too weak to be a proper healer. Maybe they were right. Maybe I am exactly the failure they think I am." Jake moved closer, risking the empathic feedback because he needed her to feel his certainty. "You are not a failure. You have become one of the most effective peacekeepers in the galaxy. You have saved more lives in the past year than most soldiers save in their entire careers." "Then why do I feel like I am about to lose everyone I have ever loved?" Zara asked, finally turning to look at him. Jake saw tears in her large, dark eyes, and he realized that despite all her growth and training, she was still the frightened princess he had chosen on the Council flagship. "Because you care about them," he said. "That is not weakness, Zara. That is what makes you strong." 3 days later, the UES Intrepid dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Velthari system. The homeworld appeared peaceful and beautiful, its surface covered with the crystalline cities that her people had built over centuries of harmonious development. There was no sign yet of the Korthak fleet, but Jake's sensors indicated they would arrive within hours. Zara had spent the entire journey preparing for this moment, but she still felt her confidence wavering as they approached her home world. She had left as a disappointment and a burden. Now she was returning as something her people might not even recognize. The Velthari authorities were surprised to receive a communication from their lost princess, and even more surprised when she requested an immediate audience with the Planetary Council. King Eldric, Zara's father, agreed to meet with her in the royal palace, though his tone suggested he was not pleased about her return. Jake accompanied Zara to the planet's surface, bringing along a small team of advisors who could help explain human military concepts to the Velthari leadership. The palace was even more beautiful than Jake had imagined, built from living crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Everything about it radiated peace and harmony. King Eldric received them in the Grand Council Chamber, a vast room, where representatives from across the planet gathered to make decisions through collective telepathic consensus. The king was tall for a Velthari, nearly 6 feet in height, with the same pale lavender skin as his daughter, but none of her newfound confidence. "Zara," he said formally, "you have returned at a troubling time. We have received disturbing reports about some kind of military fleet approaching our system. Surely this must be some misunderstanding." "Father," Zara said, stepping forward with dignity that impressed Jake, "there is no misunderstanding. The Korthak Empire is coming to destroy our world. They will arrive within hours, and they will show no mercy to anyone they find here." The assembled council members began whispering among themselves in rapid Velthari, their emotions creating a wave of confusion and disbelief that Jake could feel even without telepathic abilities. King Eldric's expression hardened as he looked at his daughter. "This is exactly what I feared would happen," he said coldly. "You have spent too much time among warriors and killers. You have allowed their violent thoughts to poison your mind. The Velthari have no enemies, Zara. We have never given anyone reason to wish us harm." "The Korthak do not need a reason," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the rejection she was receiving. "They destroy civilizations for resources and territory. Our peaceful nature will not protect us from them." "Then what do you suggest we do?" asked Chancellor Mora, an elderly Velthari female who served as the king's chief advisor. "We have no weapons, no soldiers, no knowledge of warfare. Even if we believed your warnings, there would be nothing we could do." Zara looked around the chamber at the faces of her people, seeing in them the same gentle nature that had once been her greatest weakness. "We can learn," she said. "I can teach you things that will help you survive. Not how to kill, but how to protect yourselves and each other." "You would have us become like you?" King Eldric asked with obvious disgust. "You would corrupt our entire civilization with violence and aggression?" "I would have you live," Zara said simply. The argument continued for precious minutes while Jake monitored his sensors, watching the approach of the Korthak fleet. He wanted to support Zara, but he realized this was something she had to do herself. Her people needed to hear the truth from someone they trusted, not from an alien warrior. Finally, Zara stood up and projected her thoughts directly into the minds of everyone in the chamber. Jake felt the edge of it, a wave of images and emotions. That showed exactly what the Korthak would do to the Velthari homeworld. The council members gasped, and several of them fell from their seats as they experienced visions of destruction and death. "This is what happened to the Centauri colonies last year," Zara said as the mental projection ended, "and the Rigel settlements the year before that. The Korthak do not negotiate, they do not take prisoners, and they do not show mercy. In 6 hours, they will begin orbital bombardment of our cities. In 12 hours, every living being on this planet will be dead unless we do something to stop them." The silence that followed was broken by Jake's communication device, beeping with an urgent alert. "Princess," he said quietly, "the Korthak fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. We are out of time." King Eldric stared at his daughter with a mixture of fear and something that might have been respect. "What do you need us to do?" For the first time since arriving home, Zara smiled. "I need you to trust me and to remember that sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do is refuse to let evil triumph over good." The Korthak fleet commander, General Vrock, studied the peaceful world below his flagship with satisfaction. The Velthari homeworld showed no signs of military preparation or defense systems. His 500 warships had encountered no resistance during their approach, and the planet's communication channels carried only confused civilian chatter about evacuation procedures. Begin orbital bombardment of the major population centers, General Vrak ordered his weapons officers. Standard Korthak doctrine. Destroy their infrastructure first, then land ground forces to secure any valuable resources. But as the first wave of plasma cannons prepared to fire, something unexpected happened. Every Korthak ship in the fleet suddenly lost targeting lock on their intended targets. Weapon systems that had functioned perfectly moments before began displaying error, messages, and system failures. "What is happening?" Vrak demanded as alarms began sounding throughout his flagship. On the planet's surface, Princess Zara stood in the center of the Velthari capital city, surrounded by thousands of her people who had linked their minds together in the largest telepathic network their species had ever attempted. Instead of using their collective consciousness for healing or meditation as their ancestors had done, they were using it for something entirely new. Every Velthari on the planet was sharing sensory information through their mental link, creating a massive early warning system that could detect threats across the entire star system. More importantly, they were using their combined telepathic abilities to interfere with the electronic systems of the Korthak ships, sending waves of psychic static that disrupted targeting computers and navigation systems. "The first phase is working," Zara reported to Jake through her communication device. "We have prevented them from firing on civilian targets, but this is only temporary. The Korthak will adapt to our interference within hours." Jake watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the UES Intrepid, amazed by what he was seeing. The Velthari had no weapons, no warships, and no military training, but they were successfully defending their world using abilities that no other species possessed. However, he could see that Zara was right about the temporary nature of their advantage. "Phase 2, Zara announced to her people through the telepathic network. "Remember what I taught you about pressure points and nervous system disruption. You do not need to cause permanent harm, but you must be willing to cause temporary incapacitation." The Korthak fleet, frustrated by their system failures, began launching assault shuttles toward the planet's surface. General Vrak believed that close-quarters combat would neutralize whatever strange technology the Velthari were using against his ships. He had made a serious miscalculation. As the first wave of Korthak soldiers landed in the Crystal Cities, they found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. The Velthari civilians did not run or hide as expected. Instead, they moved with coordinated precision that seemed impossible for a pacifist species. Groups of Velthari, healers working together through their mental link, approached the armed invaders with calm determination. When the Korthak soldiers fired their weapons, the Velthari seemed to know exactly where to move to avoid the energy blasts. When the soldiers tried to advance, they found their path blocked by civilians who somehow knew their intentions before. They acted on them. Most surprising of all, when individual Korthak warriors engaged the Velthari in hand-to-hand combat, the peaceful aliens used precise touches and pressure point techniques that left the soldiers unconscious but unharmed. The Velthari had learned Zara's combat methods and adapted them for mass use through their telepathic coordination. General Vrak watched in growing frustration as his elite ground forces were systematically defeated by beings who had never fought a battle in their lives. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his intelligence officers. "Sir," one of them reported nervously, "our prisoners are all uninjured, but they remain unconscious. Medical scans show no trauma or damage, but their nervous systems appear to have been temporarily shut down using some kind of pressure point technique." "Pressure points?" Vrak snarled. "These are supposed to be healers and mystics, not warriors." What General Vrak did not understand was that healing and fighting were much more closely related than most species realized. The Velthari knowledge of anatomy and nervous systems, combined with their telepathic coordination and Zara's strategic insights, had created a form of combat that was both completely effective and completely non-lethal. As the battle continued, word of the Velthari resistance spread throughout the Korthak fleet. Soldiers who had expected an easy victory against defenseless civilians found themselves facing opponents who seemed to anticipate their every move and counter their every strategy. Morale began to collapse as entire battalions were incapacitated without a single enemy casualty. From her position in the capital city, Zara felt the changing emotions of the Korthak forces through her empathic abilities. Fear was replacing confidence. Confusion was replacing aggression, and something else was beginning to emerge that she had not expected. "Jake," she said through her communicator, "I think we can end this without any more fighting." "What do you mean?" Jake replied from the Intrepid. "The Korthak soldiers are not evil," Zara explained. "They are afraid and confused, but underneath, that many of them are tired of being instruments of destruction. They joined the military because they thought it was the only way to survive in a harsh galaxy, but they never wanted to be genocidal killers." Zara made a decision that would have seemed insane to any other military commander in the galaxy. She walked alone toward the largest concentration of Korthak forces, projecting an aura of calm compassion that her people amplified through their telepathic network. The Korthak soldiers raised their weapons as she approached, but something about her presence made them hesitate. Through her empathic abilities, Zara could feel their underlying exhaustion and moral conflict, emotions they had buried beneath years of military conditioning. "I am Princess Zara of the Velthari," she said in perfect Korthak military dialect, which she had learned during her months aboard the Intrepid. "I want to speak with your commander." The soldiers looked at each other in confusion. They had been trained to deal with armed resistance, not with a small alien female who walked toward them like she was approaching old friends. One of them activated his communicator and reported the situation to his superiors. 20 minutes later, General Vrak himself landed on the planet's surface with a full battalion of his elite guards. He had come to capture or kill whoever was responsible for humiliating his invasion force. But when he saw Zara waiting calmly in the Crystal Plaza, he found himself as confused as his soldiers. "You are responsible for this interference with our operations?" he demanded, gesturing toward his unconscious troops who were being cared for by Velthari healers. "I am responsible for protecting my people," Zara replied simply, "just as you believe you are protecting yours." Vrak stared at her with growing anger. "We are here to claim this world for the Korthak Empire. Your resistance will only delay the inevitable." "General," Zara said, and her voice carried through the telepathic network to reach every Velthari on the planet. "How many worlds have you conquered? How many civilizations have you destroyed? Are your people any safer now than they were when you started?" The question caught Vrak off guard. "Safety through strength is the Korthak way," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "And yet you still live in fear," Zara observed, reading his emotional state with perfect accuracy. "Fear of enemies, fear of weakness, fear that someday someone stronger will do to you what you have done to others. When does it end?" Through her empathic abilities, Zara could sense that her words were affecting not just General Vrak, but every Korthak soldier within range of the telepathic network. Many of them had joined the military because their own worlds had been threatened or destroyed, and they believed that becoming conquerors was the only way to avoid becoming victims again. "What are you offering?" Vrak asked suspiciously. "Peace," Zara said. "Real peace, not the temporary quiet that comes after you have killed all your enemies. My people can teach you things that will make you safer than any weapon or warship ever could." "The Velthari are healers," Vrak said dismissively. "What could they possibly teach warriors like us?" "Today, my people defeated your entire invasion, force without killing a single soldier," Zara pointed out. "Your troops are unconscious, not dead. They will wake up tomorrow with no permanent injuries. If the Velthari can do that, imagine what we could teach you about truly protecting the things you care about." General Vrak looked around at his incapacitated forces, then at the Velthari healers who were monitoring their vital signs and ensuring their comfort. In his entire military career, he had never seen an enemy show such concern for defeated opponents. "Why would you help us?" he asked. "We came here to destroy your world." "Because destroying you will not make the galaxy safer for anyone," Zara replied. "But helping you become something better than conquerors might make it safer for everyone." Conversation that followed lasted for hours, with representatives from both species working to understand each other's perspectives. Jake monitored the negotiations from orbit, ready to intervene if necessary, but incur.